I love how your hair turned out.
Good afternoon. We'll call to order the February meeting of regular Board of Commissioners meeting for HABD. We'll begin with a roll call. Commissioner Barnes,
Present.
Commissioner Hood, Vice Chairman Thompson,
Present.
and Chairman Pantazis is present. I believe we have a quorum. The next item is the adoption of the agenda as printed. Commissioners, I think you've had a chance to review it. So I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as printed.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. The agenda is adopted. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which was previously emailed to us and reviewed and is part of your board packet. Are there any items that the commissioners would like to remove from the consent agenda listed before you? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda and all the items therein.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted and passed. Which moves on to old business. Does anybody have any old business? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Any new business?
If I may, I do want to pretty much give us some accolades if I can. Our operations department, we've had a increase in our occupancy rate at 99.37%, and that's across our entire portfolio. And that is outstanding to the operations department. Also, we've started our inspections on our properties in January, and we have 3 sites that has received their scores. And I just want to give a huge congratulations to the staff on those sites. We have Ilton Village, which received a 96%. We have Smithfield that received an 88%, and Harris Homes received a 96% as well. Those are outstanding scores. I just want to say and give kudos to the staff for their hard work and diligence to getting those scores up the way they are.
That's
It's
great.
not
Thank you.
hard. It's
That
not
is
easy,
good.
yes. So I want to say congratulations to them.
Well, thank you. Any other new business?
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Well, that brings up the next item, which is under executive, and it's the approval of revision to the control of fleet vehicles policy and procedures manual.
Seth and Rachel policy.
Like, I'm not gonna get no personal invitation to the mic.
Well, I try not to go where I'm not invited, so I just want to make sure.
But I hear that.
All right, well, good afternoon, commissioners. We have a very short agenda. I'm sorry, a very short board action. I'm here to revise the control of fleet vehicle policies and procedures. So this pertains to all the vehicles that HBD owns that employees use for business purposes. So this policy hasn't been revised in a long time, and we wanted to clarify a couple of provisions for the employee's sake so that items are that we've noticed some deficiencies in, maybe that we had an opportunity to retrain and provide additional guidance to employees. And so you have the full policy with all the revisions. The significant amendments are here, and I have them listed. One, we wanted to emphasize the significance of the prohibition that already exists on operating agency vehicles under the influence of alcohol or other substances, could be prescription or otherwise. 2, to reiterate that the use of HABD vehicles is restricted to the conduct of HABD business, which because we have vehicles that we use in a wide variety of ways, like maintenance vehicles, sometimes maintenance are on call, so they have to take vehicles home. And so we want to reiterate that there's a bright line between personal use and business use. And then lastly, to classify the proper storage and access of HABD vehicles, which is essentially where they should be and when they should be there, to make sure that that's clear for employees as well. Just as a kind of overarching guidance for the policy is HUD, just like with any kind of redevelopment that we're doing or program management, HUD is very clear about the use of federal funds. And so we apply their guidance to all of our vehicles. So we do have the ability to, because we have resources, there's a potential that we could purchase vehicles with non-federal funds. However, we have one policy regardless of how the vehicles are purchased. Lastly, we're not expecting any new or requesting any new funding. There's a potential that there's reduced use of vehicles. So there could be a probably not noticeable difference in any maintenance or gas or anything like that based on the changes in the policy. So any questions?
I have one
I
question.
do too. Go ahead.
Is there anything in there that talks about them having mandatory check-ins? I guess to make sure we can inspect the property, the car to see if it's any damage or anything that's not supposed to be there, at least once a month or once every month or something like every other month.
Yeah, so those kinds of procedures we're still revising. So like I said, the policy hadn't been touched in a while, so it was really out of date. So we removed a lot of provisions that were out of date. Every department, however, has a motor pool monitor, and they're responsible for some of the things that you just talked about. In addition, we have cars that go for servicing and things of that nature. So we're able to monitor the condition of vehicles, but we do need to revise who's doing that, how often they're doing that, to exactly your point.
Okay, and then not just the maintenance, because sometimes people might go 3 or 4 months and not do oil change or whatever, but I guess too, cleaning of the property, because we don't want them to just say, hey, I don't want to go get it clean. I don't, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? So,
Right. And that'll really depend on the department. So,
Okay.
and to be honest, since I don't have any maintenance guys in here, I can say I remember having a conversation with one of our maintenance managers about just the bed of the truck just being filled with, soda bottles and stuff like that. Just making sure that we're treating the vehicles in a way that's appropriate for business use. And so, but it's just important for the managers at the sites, or if it's in the executive office, to monitor that, and including to have a routine basis and document the kind of reviews that we do.
So for clarity, it is possible to put it mandatory check-in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And we do have provision in the policy about cleanliness and things like that. But I think the only thing that's missing, the gap, is that we're documenting, or that managers and others are able to document those check-ins that they should already be doing.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yes, so one or two quick questions. One, how large is the fleet?
That's a wonderful question. I would say, so we number our vehicles, and I don't want to give you that number because I know some vehicles have been taken out, but I would say somewhere between, just as a rough estimate, maybe around 75 to 125.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
wow.
I'll give you an exact answer before the end of the day.
And because the reason why, and more so to the point of the question is, if you said that this doesn't have any sort of financial impact one way or the other, but I do think if you are servicing and managing and now requiring a higher standard of cleanliness or whatever it may be, that could actually impact, or we might need to look at approving maybe an increase in whatever those maintenance fees are in order to require that. Because if it's not being required now, I don't know how it gets paid now, but if it's not being required, it might impact the budget, especially on 125 vehicles, or 75 vehicles. That could impact the budget. The second question that I have is, even though I understand that you're saying you all are going through the manual and addressing different components, is there a reason why you felt that this was necessary to bring out ahead of the other changes that you're going to come back and ask for? Like, why couldn't we?
Absolutely. And Ms. Foster addressed this in committee. So there have been recently, I guess, within the last couple of months, incidents where employees were showing that they obviously weren't abiding by the vehicle policy. And so disciplinary action did have to be taken. So that's why, again, some things were to clarify and some provisions were to reinforce things that are already existing, maybe just with better guidance for employees to make those decisions. And then it gave us an opportunity to communicate. We've already met with all the department heads about the changes, and then we'll continue to disseminate information going forward to the entire staff.
And I also want to add to that, so the information that Mr. Enbridge bringing before the board is allowing us to make these changes to the policy. And so once the approval has been made, we'll go back and put procedures in place based on these policies to move forward. And we won't have to bring those back to the board.
Okay. I just didn't want to get to a situation where we say we updating it, people review that, and then 5 minutes later, it's another update, 5 minutes later, it's another update. And it feels like it's being pieced together instead of just like taking whatever the time is to get what you need. And that way, when you're communicating the updates to the staff, it's cohesive instead of sort of like piecemeal together.
It's understood. And that's why this policy will help us move forward to implement those procedures for
Okay.
staff.
So
That's all. Thank you.
before we do the resolution, my most recent vehicle listing has 120 vehicles.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So resolution number is 2024-12690, resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District that the present CEO is hereby authorized to revise the control fleet policies and procedures manual as presented, including any additional minor grammatical changes necessary.
I move to approve the revisions to the control of fleet vehicles policy and procedures manual as stated.
A second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amber. And thank you for the good questions, commissioners. Real quick, I'd like to acknowledge that Commissioner Hood has joined us via Zoom. I know he was coming in from out of town, so we appreciate you hopping on in whatever way you can. We'll miss your vote today, but glad you can join us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up is procurement, and we've got approval of revisions to the HABD procurement policy.
Anita Bearden, Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
I do have a board action before you today, and Vice Chair Thompson, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to be sharing a little bit of a update on the procurement department. And your question actually addresses exactly what we've been doing. The last probably 9 months now, we've been really taking an assessment of the department to look at how we can better ourselves internally and externally. And one of the things that we did was identify we had a younger staff. So we needed to make sure that we prioritize the first item here, which is around training and development. We decided to train our staff internally and also train our staff at large. So we held an agency-wide training on procurement rules and guidelines that allow us to make sure that we're all on the same page about requirements for the department and how we govern ourselves with contracts and agreements. We also held a training on Vendor Cafe, which I'll be happy to share with you a little bit later. My second point on our internal improvements is around assessing our internal procedures, which led us here today. We decided to really look at our procurement policy, our procedures, and look at ways that we can improve our department. And so we've been doing that for the last few months, actually, and that led us to bringing our board action here as well. The third item, which I think is really, really important and a huge opportunity for our agency, is to make sure that we are planning from a holistic view with our departments and assessing our needs. So that's going to actually be a two-pronged approach, because when we take the opportunity to plan from the procurement side, we allow our vendors and contractors to be able to have enough time to put in for the work that we're needing at the agency. And next, I'll talk a little bit about our external plans for procurement. I'm really excited about the newest launch, which is Vendor Cafe. I believe that this is going to really help us increase our relationships with our current contractors and vendors, as well as gain new business. Vendor Cafe is an online platform, and it's an extension of our Yardi system that allows vendors to submit their invoices directly to us. And so that's going to help to create transparency in payment so the vendors can see exactly where their payment is, if it's been approved. It allows us to have a true point of truth when it comes to when an invoice was submitted. So we're really going to be pushing our invoices to move our contractors and vendors to move away from emailing contracts and then waiting for us to uploading, as opposed to being able to submit in this system so that we can have a point of truth from the submission. It's also going to help us expedite our payments, which I think is what people really want. They want to do the work and they want to get paid for it. So it's really important that we, as we're looking at our processes, this really came to the front as how can we make sure that we're paying our vendors on time and rebuild our rapport in the community. We did launch it in December 2023, and I like to call it a phase 1 approach. And we're going into our second phase now where we're doing an additional push, reminding people who haven't signed up, making sure that any emails that bounce back, we're inviting them again, having a secondary training with them to share the platform and answer any questions they may have. The next item is really around our engagement and how we're going to expand our vendor pool and list. And that's re-engaging with our Small Business Association, our Minority Business Association, other specialized groups, contractors, going to even events. We did a small business event back in the fall just to allow people to know that we have business and we want to do business with them. And also connecting more on social media. This came up in our committee meeting, and it's something that we've already reached out with our public relations department to share our opportunities more on our social media platforms. And this leads into our doing business with HABD, which is something that we've been talking about for a while, and we're ready to get kicked off, which is inviting our old vendors, our current vendors, our new prospective vendors from the engagement that we're going to do to make sure they know, how do we do business with the agency? What are some of the requirements that you need as a business in order to be qualified to submit a proposal or a bid? I think that's really important because we want to engage our small businesses. We also want to create more opportunity. So I feel like a doing business event is going to allow for us to help them be successful, which I think is really important. People look at a big solicitation and it can be really intimidating. And so we want to make it digestible for everyone. And well, I already said that we're aiming for March, and also an opportunity to create education around the agency as well as work that's coming down that they can expect to see. And then I mentioned earlier procurement planning. I think it's really important as we gauge and talk to our vendors. We've learned like some of them are scared of contract work, and we really want to make sure that we change that narrative to share it as a golden ticket. A contract is a golden ticket, right? It's a place that says, well, you're the first person we're going to call. We have a contract with you. And so I think as we look at ways we can better our department, sharing that, you know, we are having a solicitation out for amount of time gives us an opportunity to share it with our vendors and give them an opportunity to submit. So that's something that we're actually kicking off this week with our first department, which is sitting down and looking at what are your needs and what are your expectations for the next year and how can our department support you. All right, so do you have any questions for me on this before I move to the action?
I just say, I want to just make sure you keep us informed, because I know that we all know people that will want to get involved, but might not know when their opportunity is presented. So
Yes, absolutely. I will.
I do have one quick question
Sure.
in terms of, and I don't know if this goes under engagement or the vendor event. If my memory serves me correctly, don't we have a process where, and this may be with contracting, so forgive me if I'm cross-referencing, where a percentage of the contracts or the work, we have to at least let the community know about the opportunities. What is that program? Is it under minority business? I'm sorry, which one is it?
Oh, that's
Yeah, you
section
should
3.
pass section 3.
My question is, do we have something similar when it comes to vendors in terms of making sure that those who may have businesses or opportunities that they might be able to get involved with this, that our residents know about it?
That's an opportunity for us as well. It's something that we're looking at. HUD has changed their Section 3 guidelines specifically, but we still value it as an agency to make sure that we're engaging our residents and businesses and encouraging them to do business with our residents and underserved populations.
Right, not so much that they would necessarily be able to do the work, but may have,
Sure.
know people who can do the work and help you get it out, get it out into the community as much as possible.
And
Okay.
and with our workforce development, we also share the information with our residents through workforce development to share what opportunities are available for them in case, because our workforce development team identify the talent within our
Right. I
residents.
can't remember the
Mhm.
lady's name that manages it, but
Jacqueline French. Yeah, she's
Right.
on, so she's listening.
okay, correct.
I think some of the stuff you mentioned, Ms. Bearden, too, like doing the social media. I mean, I
Mhm,
think
that'll
kind of
help.
some different ways to kind of get the word out the moment we have a procurement item and some things that could be helpful too. So I certainly appreciate the updates on it. I think it's definitely a good thing to be doing. I think procurement department wise, it's time to kind of do a little reboot and kind
Sure.
of see what the next phase looks like. So I appreciate the update.
Thank you. So the next item is an approval of the revision to the policy. The purpose of this request is to obtain board approval to revise the procurement policy. The FAR regulation issued in July 2020 allowed for micro purchase limits and simplified purchase thresholds to increase to 10,000 and 250,000. We're seeking board approval to utilize the maximum micro purchase limit. We already seeked board approval in 2021 to maximize the micro purchase limit. But today we're asking to increase our small purchase threshold from 100,000 to 150,000. While we were looking through our procurement policy, we actually did some research based on our committee meeting as well to indicate that right now we're at $100,000, which is what we bring to the board. In 2023, that would have been 3 contracts that didn't go to you all, but in 2024, it would have been 10, which means essentially we have 10 contracts that are within this limit that would have allowed us to have a little bit more flexibility. I will say that 150,000 is not a small amount of money. And so our department is still going to be managing our contract register and making sure that we're transparent about these agreements. But we do feel like this change in the policy will allow us to have flexibility for general expenses and agreements. And so we're asking to increase the contract threshold from 100,000 to 150,000, which will increase our small purchase limit to be between 10,000 to 150,000.
Commissioners, one item and I don't want to hear your questions afterwards, but one item that I thought was important out of committee and that I think Ms. Bearden highlighted was the contract register we have access to shows all of our contracts. And to the extent we can, we're going to try and highlight a little bit. I think some of these kind of in between purchases in the $100,000 to $150,000 range so that we can still keep a level of oversight on the action items that are now no longer being brought to us, but that are still being implemented by the agency. So don't think that you won't have an idea what's going on still. But I do think this gives a little more flexibility and freedom for them to operate.
And also to add that HUD put the max at 250,000. So we felt like 150 was more of a
But
better middle.
all that being said, y'all have any questions though?
Okay, resolution 2024-12694 states resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District that the President and CEO is hereby authorized to revise the procurement policy, small purchase and sealed bid threshold from 100,000 to 150,000, as well as be authorized to make any additional minor or grammatical changes for clarity if necessary.
Commissioners, any motion?
I make a motion to approve the revisions of the HABD procurement policy resolution number 2024-12694.
Any second? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the update too. Next up, we got real estate development and capital improvements, approval of authorizing HABD to submit a LIHTC application for the redevelopment of Collegeville.
Nicole Earl, Chief Real Estate Officer.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good
Afternoon.
How are you today?
Good.
We have one item from the Real Estate Department today. This resolution is to allow the Housing Authority and the President and CEO to submit a 9% low-income housing tax credit for the redevelopment of Collegeville. I'm not pressing. You did say it. Press away. The objective of the request is to obtain authorization of HABD and the President CEO to execute the required documents for a 9% low-income housing tax credit application to support the first phase of the redevelopment of Collegeville. The master development, as you know, for our 525 plan, overall is to help us to reposition our portfolio. And for this particular development, it's a replacement possibly. The first phase is a transfer of assistance. We're doing the first phase at the Inslee High School. And that will include 110 family units. The Housing Authority will be providing 110 vouchers in addition to commitments such as $3.3 million in capital funds to support the capital stack for the project. Further in your package, you were provided sources and uses. I don't know if we need to go over that, but wanted you to have that information. The total cost of development is about $35.6 million. So in order to prepare the application for LIHTC, which is due actually next week, so we're feverishly working on that application. We'll have to provide those two commitments for vouchers and for the funding for capital funds. The capital funds were approved back in FY 21 in 2021 in the FY 2022 grant. And we're providing those two commitments. And this will allow the president and CEO to execute all the documents that are necessary to submit application, being led by our development partner, Zimmerman Properties. And so we're working collaboratively to put that application together, and the Housing Authority has created a single purpose entity to be the arm in their development entity, which will allow us to participate at a 20% development fee level for this particular phase. In subsequent phases, the fee will go up to a 70-30 split. So the requested action is consistent with the authority's plan to improve the quality of affordable housing and improve our living environment. The economic impact, as I mentioned before, total budget, development budget is $35.6 million, and we're providing the $3.3 million in capital funds. I think I had in here just for those who haven't seen it, what the development plan looks like. So the entire site was acquired from the city, and it's about 15 acres, but this project, it will take up about 6.6 acres. And there's some other ideas about what we'll be doing around. As you probably recall, there were some other ideas about what the rest of the site would look like, but this is the current development plan, and they are also working with a partner to provide wraparound services for the residents, anything of rental subsidies, home ownership, counseling, credit repair, and just other services that can help the entire family grow and develop. And this is just a sample of what the buildings will look like. And the site with the community center right in the middle there. So let's go back to read the resolution. So the resolution number 2024-12695 resolved that the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District authorizes the President and CEO of HABD to execute the documents related to the 2024 9% low-income housing tax credit application on behalf of HABD, and to take such further actions as may be necessary to accomplish the submission of the 9% LIHTC application to Alabama Housing Finance Authority.
Commissioners,
Questions?
any questions?
I do have one question. Can you go back one slide? Right here. Just want to make sure that I know that the resolution does not go over the budget, but where we say the projected total development cost for Collegeville Phase 1 is over 35.6 million, just making sure with that word in that if it comes in a crazy amount that we're just not bound to. You understand what I'm asking? Just with that word over, is that pretty standard that we word it like that?
We use.
Or sometimes, go ahead, Ms. Officer.
I was going to say, usually there is a certain amount that we tie to, but because of the LIHTC application we're applying for, the uncertainty, because of the competitive awards, uncertainty we receive, that the cost may change.
Gotcha.
Right. Even up until closing, sometimes the costs change, but the commitment that we're giving will not change. We're only providing the $3.3 million in capital funds for the budget.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No,
Other questions? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2024-12695 for HABD to submit a 9% low-income housing tax credit application for the redevelopment of Collegeville.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. And our last item today is that we have one person signed up to speak before the board, and I believe we have a Mr. Bourne on available via Zoom. It is your turn to speak, sir.
Very good. Thank you very much. Just want to let you know that I have been in contact with several other landlords that's around. I'm a landlord and have been working with HABD for many years. I'm pointing out that it is important that we put a plan in place to deal with the process that's out there now, meaning that I think we need to put together what is called trouble tickets. Trouble tickets would be the situation where you're having issues. I'm going to give you my issue, one of my issues now, and I have been down to the office down on 25th or 24th Street about 4 times. Not speaking of the time, it was real cold. I had to stand outside, and then I finally went in. But I have spoken to Miss Key, Miss Kizzy, Miss Stamps, and others also. And the problem is, I have been waiting since August to receive the payment for one of my tenants. And I've written about 10 to 12 emails, and it still isn't getting any better. So I came down to 3rd Avenue, 3rd Street, and I think I was to speak to or a Mr. Williams, I believe that was the name, was to call me back in 48 hours. I've heard nothing there. So essentially, other landlords are having the same issue, and I don't know how to resolve it. The problem comes that the tenants can be evicted, is what I'm told now, if we do not get our payment. We don't want that to happen. Secondly, is that it takes roughly 3 to 4 months for any type of action to take place, and that's unfair to the tenants. So therefore, the word on the street now is that you have to be very careful with HABD with the vouchers that are out there, because the voucher can expire, the tenant cannot move into the property, and so forth. So what I'm asking is that we have someone either on the board, or I know we have, I think her name is Miss Besede or something like that, that I keep hearing, but we need someone on the board that we can speak with, and also that person can assist us in resolving some of the problems that do take place from inspection time to occupancy time as well. So that's what I'm asking for today, if I could. I can have a liaison person.
Mr. Bourne, thank you for those comments and concerns. I think, I definitely would offer from the board perspective that we welcome any of these comments and any issues that you and your fellow landlords are experiencing in the program, to make sure that those are known to HABD staff. And if it, for some reason is unresolved, as it appears to be now, we welcome the concerns being relayed to us to make sure that we can make sure that those are attended to. As far as the liaison, I believe I'll kind of defer this to Ms. Foster. I know that there has been various kind of developments in the program that have occurred administratively that hopefully these issues will no longer be present for you guys. But I'll let Ms. Foster speak to those items after maybe any of my fellow commissioners want to speak to it as well, if they desire to.
So I do understand your concerns, and we are aware of those concerns, but I do want to share that we are implementing processes that we are putting in place at this time. And if it's a pleasure to the board, if I ask Mr. Williams to come forward to share some of those processes that we're putting in place.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
So the first thing I would say is directly related to Mr. Buford's response is he's correct that some things have been late, right? And so what we put together was, one, we have a rapid response team where we are trying to get to all complaints within 24 to 48 hours. In the event that that doesn't happen, we'll have somebody look into it to make sure that we're communicating, that we're still working on the issue, and that we'll communicate when it's resolved. Two, we put in place monthly landlord events, which we just introduced, and we are taking 50 to 75 landlords at a time to bring them in and to go through their concerns and have staff on site that can resolve those issues on site. We've also extended our customer service hours, particularly with our call center. We're noticing that we're getting calls at like maybe 7:30. So we open the call center from 7 until 6 so that we can make sure that we capture those calls and we follow up with those first thing the next day. But I do appreciate his concern, and then we'll make sure that it gets addressed. But those are some of the initiatives that we are currently put in place. And we do have a landlord liaison that generally works typically fast to respond to customer needs. But I think we will find that in the next 30 days, we'll see a decrease in complaints and we'll be back on track.
Mr. Williams, real quick, just for Mr. Bourne's sake here,
Name Mr. Barnes?
it's Bourne.
Okay.
It's sir, it's Rayford Bourne, is it not?
Okay.
That is correct. Bourn.
Okay, Mr. Bourne.
Okay.
The one thing I would say, Mr. Williams, is there for Mr. Bourne to get his concerns addressed, this week, who should he contact?
So he can contact me. We're already looking into his issues currently. And so I do have someone working right now on what his issues are. Now, it was a little bit complicated to find what his direct issue is because he has a lot of residents, but we were able to pinpoint the two that we believe that the issues were, and we'll get them resolved.
And certainly, some of those probably those are not an open meeting sort of discussions, but so Mr. Bourne can speak directly with you, but in the future, if he were to tell other landlords, what's the best way to get in touch with HABD if I'm having an issue? What's the process that he should explain to them?
So I would say
speaking on their behalf.
Our customer service line. However, in the event that you're not getting a response, it's appropriate to reach out to me.
You mentioned that they have a landlord liaison. Are you that?
I am.
Or who is the landlord liaison?
The landlord liaison is actually Ms. Lillian Stamps. So you're correct. Their first line of response should be to her. In the event that they're not getting a response, then they can escalate the issue to me.
So first you're saying call customer service. If not customer service, then Lillian Stamps. If not Lillian Stamps, then you.
Correct.
Okay. How can he contact Lillian Stamps?
Okay. I have her email, by the way, for Ms. Lillian Stamps. However, for Mr. Williams, they would not give me his phone number. I came to a desk. There's a lady behind the desk. You walk in, and also they would not give me his email nor his phone number. And so therefore, I could not send the emails to him as well. And the other thing is that we, all of us are eager to sit down and to go over exactly our situation. That's what we did with Ms. Stamp. We sat down with her, and therefore she has everything. She has all the emails as well. But
okay. Mr. Bourne, I think then I would encourage, it sounds like Mr. Williams is willing to provide his contact. So I would encourage y'all to get together.
Very good. Thank you.
And see where things go. And then hopefully if there are others that are having similar concerns, we can resolve this as well in some of these landlord events that are about to be held in the next few weeks and months.
Thank you.
I have one question about the landlord event. You said that you're doing them in 50 to 75. You're inviting them. It's not open for any landlord that wants to come. It's invite only.
It's invite only due to capacity issues. So, but we'll work the entire list and get through all the landlords to make sure that they invite it, and they'll happen on a monthly basis as well. And
we've done more like open events even recently, I think. This is more like current in-house landlords.
Right. So the landlords have the ability to come to this building Monday through Friday, right? And so if they have a concern, they can definitely come to this building. Generally, Ms. Stamps would see them, or Ms. Bosede would see them as well. But I think that we want to make sure that we're being proactive and make sure that we just don't have standing issues out there. So the events are so that we can find out what the issues are, address them real time, and address a bigger number than people coming to us with the issues.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments on this as of now? Ms. Foster, I know you seem like you wanted to say something else. Is there anything you want to add? to
He
Mr. Bowen's
covered it.
concern?
I just wanted to ensure that we go over all the process that we're putting in place. And again, I appreciate Mr. Bowen for providing his concerns, and not only for himself, but others, but I want to assure him that we are working on this. It's not something that we're not aware of, and we are, we will have opportunity to have a conversation with him and others. And encourage that when we put the invites out to please attend, that's what, it helps us to understand and address the issues that are being, concerns to them.
I think the last thing I would add to, and again, thank you, Mr. Bourne, for your concerns, and for Mr. Williams for kind of giving us an overview of where we are on this. I know this is an ongoing process that we're kind of trying to revamp. So to the extent we can continue to get updates on the status and progress, particularly as to some of these issues that Mr. Bourne raised, that would be great the next meeting.
I want to say one more thing. I know we said you're going to communicate with Mr. Byrne. Is someone going to be inboxing him, I guess, messaging him your information from our side now?
I want to follow up with him right after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, having seen no one else sign up to speak before the board, that will wrap up this segment of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Sorry, we got to adjourn. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.